So with the release of season 4, just a couple of weeks away, leakers are doing what they do, which is obviously leaking. But it's starting to kind of have a lot of people a little bit worried and some other people excited. Let's talk about it. YouTube, what's going on, man? It's Father Dark. Hope everybody's having a great week so far. Let's go ahead and get into it. So, like I said in the intro of the video, season 4 is rapidly approaching. We're getting to that point where, leakers and people are starting to speculate as to who's going to be the new characters, if there's any like game modes or anything like that. And there actually is some really interesting stuff that I'm going to get into a little bit after I cover the characters and potentially who could be coming to the video. So stick around for that. But the main thing that I want to talk about initially is the characters that have been said for a while now to be released. Now, I just want to go ahead and preface and say that anything that I talk about in regards to leaks, you definitely just want to take that with a grain of salt. There is no like 100%. Now, there are some leakers out there that have a bit more credibility just because they have been right more times than wrong. But still, when it comes to anything regarding leaks and stuff like that, you definitely just want to take it as what it is, which is speculation. I'm not one of those, content creators that comes out and goes, oh, this is the character that's coming to the game, everybody. Go ahead and get excited about it. Like, no, we are taking educated guesses here based off of other stuff. And like I said, with leakers in the past that have been right more times than they've been wrong, if they've been wrong at all in regards to stuff like this. But for, we don't know anything for certain. And it's still really much so up in the air. So definitely just want to preface and say that ahead of time. But yeah, so let's go ahead and talk about it. So for the last couple of weeks now, if not the last month or so, it's been a while. People have been saying that Daredevil and that Angela were going to be coming to the game. Now, the thing is that every season there are people who come out and they say, well, this particular character is going to come, or we found voice lines in the game for different characters and stuff like that. But there are one or two leakers that have been pretty spot on with who they said was going to come to the game. And pretty much every time that we get around, this far out from the new season, which is a couple of weeks, you have leakers that come out and they say, well, these are the two characters that are coming out, and lo and behold, those are the two characters that end up coming out. Now, the thing is that even with us having an idea of who potentially is coming, a lot of times it's really hard to know what their role is going to be, if they're going to be a DPS strategist or if they're going to be a tank. And the thing is too is that with the interview that we saw at I believe it was during the Ignite tournament, it could have been before or after, I don't know, but it was done with Guang Guang, and this is the famous interview where they said that they were going to release a video talking about matchmaking in the coming weeks, and then we ended up getting that video. But during that interview, Guang Guang had said that when he was asked about the fact that there is kind of a DPS problem in Marvel Rivals, and I say kind of lightly, there's a pretty serious DPS problem, meaning that there are 3 times the amount of DPS versus tanks in the game and strategists in the game. So, people were really wondering like what they're going to do to kind of mitigate the fact that there are so many more vanguards, or DPS than there are strategists and tanks. And in that video, in that interview, he basically said that they have to make their characters like a year in advance, which makes sense. That's pretty much how games work. Whenever you're playing a live service game, which if you don't know, a live service game, it's just a game that has to regularly update. It doesn't just come out like a paid game and that's all you get until the sequel to that game or whatever the case is. It has to update every couple of months to keep people interested in stuff, which a lot of people enjoy, which is why more games are starting to follow that model. But you have to be able to plan your content out a year in advance. So anything that we're getting now in the game, that's probably something that was made, obviously like the year prior and stuff, just because there's so much that goes into creating the models for the characters, their abilities, getting their voice lines and stuff like that, and making sure that they're balanced correctly, and just so many different things. In that interview, he didn't really seem too confident about being able to balance out the different roles and stuff like that. It seemed like he was kind of trying to dance around the question to kind of put people down gently, but at the same time it's pretty much looking like they probably have far more DPS characters ready to go than they do anything else. And that's not to say that maybe the last minute they can't change some stuff around and take a character that originally maybe was supposed to be a DPS and go, here, let's just give them something to kind of heal with. But when you think about it, like I said, Daredevil is the character that has been talked about the most, and there are plenty of things in the game that allude to Daredevil. Daredevil. I mean, on the one map, I forget exactly what it's called, but the Fantastic Four map that was released, there's literally a billboard right there, right before you get to the enemy spawn, that says, Matt Murdock, and has, him and Foggy's lawyer billboard. There's also little posters around that map that talk about Heroes for Hire, which anyone that doesn't know, Heroes for Hire is, they're basically the street level superheroes of Hell's Kitchen, like Iron Fist, Jessica Jones, and Luke Cage. So it wouldn't be crazy that we would definitely be getting Daredevil, especially since Daredevil has been made so popular by the Netflix show. Not that he wasn't before, but he's definitely been opened up to a far larger audience. And I definitely would say he's probably the most popular out of all the Heroes for Hire. So that's definitely something that I think that we are getting now. The problem with that is that when you think about it, it's kind of hard to make him anything other than a DPS. I mean, you could argue that he could technically be a tank simply because he's just known to kind of be able to take a beating and keep it going. And it wouldn't be the first time that we have a tank that's kind of like, why is this a tank? Like Doctor Strange, I feel like, people are like, why does Doctor Strange have so much health? I get why he has a giant shield, but in regards to him being an actual tank, basically you can kind of take liberties with stuff like that. Now, the only thing that I can't see him being is a support. That just kind of seems, it's like, what are we realistically going to be healing people with, like, alcohol and band-aids and stuff like that? So I just, I don't understand what exactly they could possibly do to make Daredevil a support player, so that just to me doesn't make any sense. The second character that has been leaked a lot and talked about in the leaks and stuff is Angela. Now, Angela, for those of you that don't know, she was originally a character for Spawn, which is Image Comics, I believe. And at some point in time, the person that actually created Angela switched over to Marvel Comics. And a lot of times, these writers and stuff, they'll have like rights to the character. So the character ended up becoming a Marvel character. And they transitioned it over to where Angela was actually Thor and Loki's sister at some point. So now she's part of Marvel is basically what I'm saying. Now, Angela, even though she is a straight up just warrior, an Asgardian warrior at that, I could see how maybe they could play around with her kit to make her a strategist, because if you think about it, I'm pretty sure before this game released, if I would have told you Loki was going to be in a video game and he could have a role that could potentially be a support player, a DPS, or a tank, you probably would have been like, well, I don't see him being anything other than a DPS. What exactly does his history have to do with healing and stuff like that? And he may have something, his comic book origins and stuff like that I'm just not aware of. But at the same time, I've never seen anything with Loki where I've thought like, man, that guy's a healer, And they've done that with other characters as well. You think about like Ultron and stuff like that. These are characters that we wouldn't really think of as being supports, but they were able to do it, right? So you could make Angela like, I don't know, like some kind of like really, really aggressive support player, kind of like I said before, if you're thinking about it, like Mantis or, Ultron or something like that. So that wouldn't be crazy to be able to play around with that. But with Daredevil, I don't see that happening. The other character that has been being talked about recently is Deadpool. Now, Deadpool, I think with him, it's really just a thing because we've had voice lines in the game for him for a while, and they keep adding more and more voice lines, and they're not his actual voice lines. They're voice lines from other people like talking to him. So they haven't put those in the game yet, but they have put them in for other characters, replying to things that he's saying or asking him questions or whatever the case is. And Deadpool has been a character that's been talked about for a while now, like since, I don't know, back during the first season, people were saying Deadpool was coming. So with that one, I'm kind of a bit more skeptical just because I think people just really want him to be in the game. Not saying that he's not obviously coming. I mean, he's extremely popular. Not to mention, there's been other stuff in the game. We already have, the Wolverine skin from Wolverine and Deadpool. There was a calling card or a nameplate, I believe as they call them in this game, that has Deadpool, and that's been in there, I don't know, pretty much since the beginning of the game. But that one was only obtainable through, I don't know, like linking your account to another Marvel game of some sort. I can't remember which one. But still, though, to me, that's not crazy. Not to mention, they had posted a poll on their Discord or on someone's Discord at some point in time back in like December, I think, toward the end of December, where they basically had a list of different characters that could potentially come to the game, and they were allowing people to vote on those characters, and Deadpool was up there. I believe it was like Ghost Rider, Deadpool, and like Thanos or something like that were probably like two of the, or the top three or whatever. And like I could be wrong on the Thanos part, but the point still stands is that Deadpool is an extremely popular character, so it wouldn't make sense to not add him at some point in time. It's just that from the leakers that have had the best track record in regards to leaking stuff, they keep saying Angela and Daredevil over and over again. And I just kind of feel like that's more than likely where we're going to be headed, just based off of kind of how things have went in the past when it's come to these leaks and stuff. And what I've heard most consistently is usually kind of where it pans out. I feel like Deadpool is just something that people are just kind of throwing out there because they hear those voice lines. And like I said, once again, those have to be taken with a grain of salt, simply because there are voice lines actually in the game for a few different people that we haven't gotten yet. For example, Captain Marvel had a bunch of voice lines. There were a few other characters as well, but I can't remember off the top of my head. And I do believe that a lot of times they put those in the game to either, one, throw us off and kind of go, just have something to talk about and get excited about. And maybe they can potentially kind of gauge how excited people are. And if they say, well, we're going to release this character, but then we see that people are super excited for this other character, maybe they swap it out at the last second, right? Because, who cares? But I do also think that these characters kind of have to potentially go with the story of what's going on. So that is interesting. Not that they can't swap stuff around, but it is interesting. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about is something that I think is really, really interesting. People have recently found some game files left over in the game, and basically, I'm going to put a link in the description for you all so you can kind of read about it yourself. But there's basically, they said there's some type of game mode called a time stream raid and Infinity Crisis. And in this tweet that I'm reading, it says that includes unseen footage of scraps from the game's modes. Both of these game modes seem to be linked in some way or another. Infinity Crisis being an obvious capture the flag game mode, and Time Stream Raid being a potential PvE type game mode featuring Kraken. It's not clear if these game modes are scrapped or not, but some materials related to the Time Stream Raid game mode were actually updated. So I wasn't even going to talk about that in this video until I had saw that part where they were basically saying that they had updated certain aspects of it recently, because it's not uncommon with video games where they'll put certain stuff in the game. When games are in development, there's a lot of times where they kind of have like these huge drawing boards and they say, we could do this, we could do that, yada, 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 right? And they're just kind of throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. And a lot of times once you actually get the game to a point to where it's ready to go and your investors are kind of like, hey, we're ready for you to, flip the switch on this and get it out there to the public so we can start, making our money back, right? They start to realize that with the time constraints that they have, it's probably best to just leave certain things out of the game and maybe potentially revisit them down the future, or they realize that it's just not practical to try and, do the particular thing that they had in mind or whatever. So this isn't uncommon for there to be stuff in game files that just is like left over from early development or something that they were trying to do, and then they just kind of said, you know what, let's do something else. But what I do think is interesting about it is that there are a lot of people that play Marvel Rivals that are very casual. And when you think about games like, I feel like Call of Duty is a really good example, right? There are a lot of people that get Call of Duty every year really just to play the campaign and like maybe like the Spec Ops missions and stuff that are kind of like branch offs from the campaign a lot of times. And that's for the more casual audience that just enjoys having fun and not having to worry about being super competitive. And I do think that it's smart for games to have multiple outlets for people, and not just game modes that are also part of like the multiplayer. They're just separate like types of game modes and stuff, but game modes that are very PvE oriented so that people have something to work toward. Kind of like when we had that like the auto chess mode, I forget what it was, but the Ultron game mode that we had, there was a lot of people that really enjoyed playing that for some reason. Now, me personally, I didn't really care for it, but I'm not everybody, right? So there were people that did enjoy playing it. Not everybody just wants to sit here and grind out ranked all day or just play quick play all day long or do matches or whatever, right? So to me, it would make a lot of sense to add in some type of PvP mode, especially if they did it correctly. Now, what interests me is that they said one of these was like a raid mode, where you'd be able to go in and grab things and then get out, kind of like if you think about like Destiny, right? Like you go in, you do whatever it is, maybe you take out this giant monster or something with friends, and maybe you get random loot or something that you can only get from these. Maybe it's cosmetics, maybe it's I don't know, something, maybe like a little, the little keychains or something we have, whatever the case is, but something that would motivate people to want to go in and play these things and maybe try them on different difficulties to get different, accessories or calling card, whatever the case is, right? There's a lot of different things that they could do that would motivate a lot of people to want to play them. But I do think that it would be really smart for them to have some type of PvE game mode, because like I said, there's just a lot of people that get really burnt out from just playing multiplayer all the time, ranked and stuff like that, it's always better to have more options than to not, if you get what I'm saying. And it can also bring in a lot of other people that maybe kind of get overwhelmed from the multiplayer aspect and stuff like that. So those are my thoughts and opinions on that. But let me know in the comments what you think. Do you think that we're going to be getting Daredevil or Angela, maybe Deadpool? And if not, who are the characters that you really would want to see? I mean, obviously you just saying that in the comments isn't going to make NetEase just magically make them appear. I know there's a lot of people that are like, give me Gambit, give me Cyclops. And personally, I think that they're kind of saving those characters for more like a rainy day when the player base is probably at their lowest, and it's like, let's just pull out these classics here that people just can't really refuse or resist. But I am still curious to know what you all think. Also, would you be interested in a raid type of PvE mode if it offered cosmetics or different things that maybe new things that they introduced that we haven't had before or even thought about in regards to rewards and stuff like that for completing these different, trials and raids and stuff like that. So like I said, just let me know in the comments what you think. I'm really excited for season 4. I think that they're actually, putting a lot of effort and energy into it. I don't know that for certain, but from the leaks and stuff that I'm seeing, it seems like they actually are trying to kind of, get people to be more interested in the game, because it's not a secret that the numbers have kind of been dwindling and people are moving on to other things. And pretty soon we're going to be getting into the next, quarter of gaming, where a lot of different things are going to be releasing, and they're going to have their hands full trying to compete with people's attention spans, especially in today's market, where that's pretty much how it is with games. They're constantly just doing whatever they can to get you to focus on them as much as possible, which is understandable. It's business at the end of the day. So, but that's all I got for this video. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up. I appreciate you all for listening. I'm Father Dark, and I'll catch you on the next one.